The courtroom was packed that morning, the kind of electric silence that only happened when everyone knew something extraordinary was about to unfold. The bailiff announced the case, Tara Collins versus Chase Langford, and the audience immediately began whispering. The name Langford was well known. It belonged to one of the wealthiest real estate dynasties in New York City, a family whose skyscrapers kissed the skyline and whose influence stretched into City Hall. And the man walking through the courtroom doors that morning looked every bit the heir to an empire. Chase Langford was 28 years old, tall, and perfectly styled, wearing a dark navy suit that probably cost more than most people's yearly rent. A diamond watch glimmered under the fluorescent lights as he adjusted his cufflinks. He moved with that effortless arrogance of a man who had never been told no, not by teachers, not by police, not by anyone. When he took his seat at the defendant's table, his expression carried the faint smirk of someone who believed this entire process was beneath him. Judge Judy glanced up from her file. "Mr. Langford," she said, her tone cool and businesslike, "you're being sued by Miss Tara Collins for property damage amounting to $78,000. She claims that you and your associates vandalized her cafe following an altercation. Is that correct?" Chase didn't look up from his phone. "Allegedly," he said, drawling the word like it was a joke. Judge Judy's eyebrow twitched, a small movement, but anyone who had ever watched her knew what it meant. "Put the phone away, Mr. Langford. You're not in a nightclub." Chase glanced up, smiled faintly, and slipped it into his jacket pocket. "Of course, Your Honor," he said, voice dripping with mock politeness. Across from him sat Tara Collins, early 40s, simple blouse, tired eyes that had seen too many long days. She wasn't glamorous, but there was strength in the way she held herself. Her hands were clasped tightly, and though she looked nervous, her eyes burned with quiet determination. She had nothing left to lose, and that made her dangerous in her own way. Judge Judy continued reading from the file. "It says here that Mr. Langford entered the plaintiff's business on the evening of March 21 with 2 companions. An argument ensued, property was damaged, and you left without paying for the damages. The plaintiff states you threatened her employees and claimed your father owned the block. Do you deny this?" Chase leaned back in his chair. "Your Honor," he said with a laugh, "look, this is a misunderstanding. My friends and I were at her cafe after hours. We might have knocked over a table, accidents happen. I offered to pay for the damages that night, but she made it a big deal. Probably realized who I was and decided to turn it into a payday." Judy looked unimpressed. "You offered to pay? I see no record of that. I didn't put it in writing." "We were just talking," Chase replied, shrugging. People like her love to exaggerate things when they see a Langford involved. The audience reacted audibly, a low murmur rippling through the room. Tara flinched but didn't speak. Judge Judy's pen stopped moving. Slowly, she looked up, and the temperature in the room seemed to drop. "People like her," she repeated. Chase smirked. "I meant, small business owners, you know. Always looking for someone to blame when things go wrong. It's the same everywhere." Judy's eyes narrowed, but she said nothing yet. Her silence was sharper than any retort. The sound of her tapping pen echoed in the quiet room. "Miss Collins," she said after a long pause, "tell me what happened that night." Tara spoke carefully, voice trembling at first but gaining steadiness as she went on. "He came in around 10:30. We were closing. He demanded coffee, even though the machines were already cleaned. When my staff politely told him we were closed, he laughed. He said, 'Do you know who I am? My family owns this building.' When my manager refused service, he got angry. He knocked over a chair, then a display stand. We asked him to leave. He told us we'd regret it. The next morning, the front windows were shattered." Judge Judy turned her gaze to Chase. "Did you threaten this woman?" Chase chuckled. "Your Honor, I might have said something out of frustration, but come on, you'll regret it. It's a figure of speech." Judy didn't blink. Do you have any proof you didn't damage her property after leaving? He smiled lazily. Do I need proof to disprove something ridiculous? My father's lawyers already handled the police report. They found no evidence linking me to the damage. So, I'm not sure why we're wasting time here. The arrogance in his voice made the audience shift uncomfortably. Tara looked down, trying not to cry. Judge Judy closed the file. I'll decide what's a waste of time, Mr. Langford. He tilted his head. Of course, Your Honor, he said smoothly, his voice soaked with mock respect. I didn't mean to offend. I just think we should keep things efficient. I've got a meeting in Midtown after this. Judy's eyes locked on his. You'll be late. The courtroom erupted in soft laughter. But Chase didn't smile. His jaw tightened. His ego, bruised for the first time, flared beneath the surface. I hope you understand, Judge, he said, his voice now colder, my father and I are generous contributors to several city programs, including judicial scholarships. The bailiff's head snapped toward him. The audience gasped. Even Tara looked horrified. Judge Judy leaned back slowly, her expression unreadable. Is that so? She asked, her tone deceptively mild. Yeah, Chase said with a shrug. So let's not make this personal. This is just a misunderstanding. People like you deal with bigger cases. The silence that followed was suffocating. Judy didn't move. She didn't even blink. Her hands folded neatly on the desk as she stared at him for 3 long, unbearable seconds. Then, in a voice low enough to make the entire room lean forward, she said, people like me? Chase grinned, oblivious to the storm building in front of him. I mean, come on, Judge. You've seen my father's name on those donation plaques. He's basically keeping the system alive. We're all part of the same machine here. The smirk didn't even finish forming before the words that would make courtroom history left his mouth. Relax, Judge, he said casually. I own half this city. Technically, I own you too. The audience gasped. The bailiff froze. Tara's eyes widened in disbelief. Judge Judy didn't speak. Not a word. Not for 3 full seconds. Her face went pale, not with fear, but with the kind of shock that precedes fury. The silence was deafening. You could hear the hum of the lights. The moment stretched like a live wire, the billionaire's son grinning at the bench, utterly unaware that he had just walked into the biggest mistake of his life. The silence that followed Chase Langford's words hung in the air like the weight of 1,000 storms. I own you. The audacity of it echoed across the courtroom, bouncing between wooden benches and stunned faces. Even the bailiff, a man who'd seen everything from screaming Karens to sobbing con artists, looked frozen in disbelief. Judge Judy didn't move. Her fingers rested lightly on her bench, her expression perfectly blank, but her stillness was its own kind of violence. She stared at him, not as a judge at that moment, but as a human being looking at something grotesque. When she finally spoke, her voice was quiet, dangerous. Would you like to repeat that, Mr. Langford? Chase tilted his chin upward slightly, misreading her calm as weakness. It's not an insult, he said, his smirk widening. It's just reality. My family's companies, Langford Development, Langford Equity, Langford Energy, we fund half this city. We sponsor your judicial programs. We build your courthouses. You work inside one of our properties right now. He gestured vaguely toward the ceiling, as if the building itself belonged to him. So when I say I own you, Judge, I don't mean you personally. I mean the system. The world. Everything around us. It all runs on Langford money. A murmur rippled through the crowd. Tara Collins, the plaintiff, looked like she was watching something surreal unfold. She whispered under her breath, "My God, he's actually saying it." Judy's eyes never left his. "Mr. Langford," she said, each syllable clipped with precision, "this courtroom runs on something your money can't buy, truth. And you're about to learn how expensive lies can get. But Chase wasn't listening. He leaned back in his chair, stretching, exuding the lazy arrogance of a man who'd always escaped consequences. "Your Honor," he said smoothly, "you're taking this too seriously. I didn't mean to offend you. It's just, let's be honest. You don't really think this woman has a case, do you? My father already handled the police report. It was dismissed. No charges. No evidence. This is just good TV." That last line, the mockery, the dismissal, broke something in the room. The audience's whispers turned into gasps. Judge Judy's eyes narrowed slightly, and then she leaned forward, resting both hands on the bench. "Let's clarify something, Mr. Langford. This isn't television for me. This is justice. I don't play pretend. You're in a courtroom that demands accountability. If you came here to perform, you're in the wrong theater." For the first time, Chase's smirk flickered. His confidence faltered just enough to betray a hint of uncertainty. He glanced at his lawyer, who avoided eye contact. Judge Judy opened the folder before her. "You said your father handled the police report. I've read it. I've also reviewed the supplemental evidence provided by Miss Collins." She turned to Tara. "Miss Collins, for the record, tell me exactly what happened after the incident at your cafe." Tara clasped her hands, steadying her voice. "After he left, I went to the precinct to file a report. The officer said they'd look into it. 2 days later, I got a call. The case was closed. Insufficient evidence. But when I went to check the CCTV footage from our security camera, the file was corrupted. I found out later one of Mr. Langford's employees had called my landlord, the same company that owns the building, and told them to replace the system, as a courtesy. That system was removed within 24 hours. Judge Judy's gaze sharpened. "Are you saying your evidence was destroyed?" Tara nodded. "Yes, Your Honor. And I have the email confirming that maintenance request." She handed the printed document to the bailiff. Judy flipped through it quickly. "Langford Property Management," she read aloud, "approved by Executive Operations. That's your father's company, Mr. Langford." Chase shrugged, trying to look casual but shifting uneasily now. "We manage thousands of buildings, Judge. I can't control every maintenance order." Judy looked up at him slowly. "You just said you own half the city. So which is it? The puppet master who controls everything, or the clueless child who knows nothing?" The audience laughed softly. Chase's face tightened, his composure cracking. "You think this is funny? Do you have any idea who my father is?" Her answer came like a whip. "I don't care who your father is. And that's the problem, isn't it? You've spent your life walking into rooms where everyone cared too much." The words hit like gunfire. Chase blinked, momentarily speechless, his mind searching for footing. For the first time, Judge Judy's silence wasn't his advantage, it was his undoing. She continued, voice low but steady. "I know your type, Mr. Langford. You were raised believing your name was a shield. That money could erase mistakes, silence truth, and buy forgiveness. But this," she gestured around the courtroom, "this is the one room left where your father's money can't touch the floor." Tara's lips trembled. She whispered, "Thank you," under her breath. Judy turned to her gently. "You don't thank me yet, Miss Collins. Justice isn't gratitude, it's restoration." Then she shifted back to Chase. "Your father's influence may buy silence, but it can't buy me. I've seen men like you walk in with entitlement and walk out with humility. The difference between them and you? They learned to listen before they lost everything." Chase scoffed. "You really think a lecture changes anything? This whole thing, this show, it's entertainment. You can yell, I can smile, the audience claps, and my father wires the check. That's how it works. It's all noise." Judy's eyes darkened. You think justice is noise? Then maybe you've never actually heard it. Her words cut deep, sharper than any gavel strike. The room went still again. Even Chase's lawyer leaned back, silent, defeated. Judy looked down briefly, flipping a page in her notes, and when she spoke again, her voice had that calm, almost surgical tone she reserved for dismantling someone piece by piece. Mr. Langford, you may believe you're untouchable, but I assure you, every empire falls. And when arrogance builds the walls, it always collapses from within. She leaned back. I've been a judge for decades. I've sentenced men who built nothing but excuses. You've built empires out of them. Chase tried to interject, but his voice cracked. You can't talk to me like. Oh, I can, she snapped, slicing through his words. Because the moment you walked through that door, you stopped being a Langford. You became a defendant. And in this room, the only thing that matters isn't your name, it's your behavior. The last word echoed like a gavel before the actual one struck the bench. We'll resume after recess, she said coldly. And Mr. Langford, I strongly suggest you think about who really owns what. The cameras stayed fixed on her face, not angry, not smug, but utterly still. It was the same expression she wore before tearing someone's facade apart, brick by privileged brick. Outside, the whispers had already begun. Did he really say he owned her? Is this for real? Judge Judy went pale. They didn't know it yet, but that silence, that chilling, poised quiet, wasn't shock. It was the calm before the destruction of everything the Langford name thought it could buy. When the courtroom reconvened after recess, the energy was entirely different. The smug laughter that had followed Chase Langford into the room earlier was gone. The audience sat rigidly, eyes fixed on the defendant's table where Chase now slouched, whispering furiously to his lawyer. His polished composure was beginning to crack. The camera caught it, the tapping of his foot, the clenched jaw, the nervous glance toward Judge Judy, who sat stone still, rereading her notes like a general preparing for war. The bailiff announced the session, and the gavel's sharp crack silenced even the smallest murmur. Judge Judy lifted her eyes, and in that moment, everyone felt it, she was done tolerating arrogance. Mr. Langford, she began, her tone deceptively calm, I trust you used the recess to reflect on your earlier statements. Chase forced a smile. Of course, Your Honor. I realize maybe I was a little blunt before. My apologies if my words came across as disrespectful. Judy tilted her head. If. He hesitated, trying to recover. I didn't mean any offense. I just meant that sometimes people misinterpret confidence for arrogance. Confidence, she repeated, voice dripping with irony. Interesting word choice. Because confidence usually comes from merit. Arrogance, Mr. Langford, comes from entitlement. Let's see which one applies to you. She opened the thick file in front of her, a sound that echoed like a warning bell. Before this case began, I requested additional documentation from our research department. You claimed the police found no evidence connecting you to the vandalism of Miss Collins's cafe. You claimed it was all a misunderstanding. And you said the case was dismissed, handled privately. Is that correct? Chase nodded, relieved to be back on familiar ground. Exactly. My father's legal team cooperated fully. It's all been settled. Settled, Judy repeated slowly, flipping to a page. Interesting, because what I have here tells a different story. She held up a printed report. According to the Midtown Police Department, the original case was closed, not resolved. And 2 detectives assigned to it were later reassigned without explanation. However, 3 days after that, a check for $75,000 was deposited into the Midtown Police Pension Fund, donated by Langford Development Group. The air in the room seemed to vanish. Chase's face froze. His lawyer's hand twitched toward the table, but Judy's voice sliced through before he could speak. Don't bother objecting. I verified the donation through public records. Chase laughed weakly. That's philanthropy, Judge. My father donates to a lot of causes. Judy leaned forward slightly, her eyes narrowing. Philanthropy that coincidentally appears 3 days after your case disappears. Tell me, Mr. Langford, do your father's charitable impulses always align so neatly with his legal inconveniences? The audience broke into murmurs again. Tara sat clutching her hands together, hope flickering across her face for the first time. Chase's jaw tightened. This is ridiculous. You can't accuse my father of. I'm not accusing your father, Judy interrupted, I'm examining your conduct. And so far, your conduct reeks of privilege and evasion. She turned to the bailiff. Bring in Exhibit C. The bailiff placed a small flash drive on the desk. Judy nodded toward the monitor. This is the unedited surveillance footage from Miss Collins's cafe, obtained from her insurance provider, not her landlord. It was automatically backed up to the cloud before the system was removed. The color drained from Chase's face. The screen flickered to life. The grainy footage showed a nearly empty cafe, tables stacked for closing. Then the door opened, Chase, unmistakable in his tailored suit, stumbled in, clearly intoxicated. He gestured wildly, shouting at someone off camera. Then came the shove, the crash of a display rack, the sound of breaking glass. His voice carried through the microphone, my father owns this block. You'll regret this. The room fell dead silent except for the sound of Chase breathing heavily through his nose. When the video ended, Judy looked up slowly. That was you, wasn't it? Chase swallowed. I was upset. They were rude to me. Stop. Her voice cracked like a whip. That's enough. She closed the file with a deliberate snap. You destroyed someone's livelihood because your ego was bruised. Then you tried to hide behind your father's name. Tell me, Mr. Langford, how much is your dignity worth? The price of a window? A wall? Or the next person's silence? His lawyer leaned forward. Your Honor, this line of questioning is perfectly within my rights, Judy said sharply. You may sit down. The lawyer obeyed. Judy looked directly at Chase now, her voice low, cutting. You came here expecting a performance. You thought this was another stage where your father's money could control the script. But this isn't a play, Mr. Langford. This is reality. And in reality, the audience doesn't clap for villains. The audience erupted in quiet applause anyway, unable to contain it. Judy continued, her tone softening only slightly. Miss Collins, I want you to know something. Men like this build walls to protect their reputations, not their character. And every so often, those walls crumble. Today is one of those days. Tara nodded, tears brimming in her eyes. Thank you, Your Honor. Chase shifted in his chair, his earlier bravado completely gone. His voice was lower now, quieter. You don't understand how this works. My father, he fixes things. He'll make this right. Judy's reply was ice cold. No, Mr. Langford. I will make this right. She paused, letting the silence sting before continuing. You've lived your life believing power means never having to say you're sorry. But here, power means responsibility. And you've shown none. She turned back to the file. Before we move to sentencing, I want to make something clear. You said you own half this city. Maybe you do. But today, you're about to lose the one thing you can't buy back, your credibility. The bailiff stood tall beside the bench. The camera zoomed in on Chase's pale face, his lips trembling slightly as he stared down at the table. The arrogant heir who thought he could buy justice was finally realizing that he couldn't even rent it. And Judge Judy, calm and relentless, prepared to do what no one in his privileged life ever had, hold him accountable. The room felt heavier when Judge Judy returned from chambers. The fluorescent lights hummed faintly, and every pair of eyes in the courtroom followed her as she took her seat. Her face was calm, too calm. That serene stillness, the one that came before she ripped someone apart with precision, made the air feel charged, like the seconds before lightning struck. Chase Langford shifted uncomfortably in his seat, his earlier swagger completely drained. The billionaire's son looked smaller now, almost boyish, as though the weight of exposure had finally started pressing against his carefully built facade. "Mr. Langford," Judy began, her tone measured and surgical. "Before I deliver my judgment, I want to give you an opportunity to explain something." Chase straightened slightly, gripping the edge of the table like a drowning man grasping at a floating piece of wood. "Your Honor, I think things have gone too far. I've already said I'm sorry. This whole situation was a misunderstanding blown out of proportion. I didn't mean to offend anyone, certainly not you. If my words came off wrong..." Judy cut in sharply. "Wrong? You told a sitting judge that you owned her. You mocked a small business owner whose property you damaged. You used your father's money to bury a police report and called it philanthropy. And now you want to call this a misunderstanding?" The courtroom murmured. Chase's throat worked as he swallowed. "You don't understand, Judge. My father expects me to handle things quickly. He doesn't like bad publicity." "Bad publicity?" Judy repeated, leaning forward. "You mean consequences?" Her tone dropped into that frightening, deliberate calm that audiences across America knew well, the tone that always came before destruction. "You've lived your entire life surrounded by people who clean up your messes. But I don't work for your father, Mr. Langford. And I don't care how many buildings carry your family's name. What I care about is truth. And respect. Neither of which you seem to value." She motioned for the bailiff. "Bring me the supplemental exhibits." He handed her another folder, thick, stapled, with a blue post-it tab marked confidential background. Judy flipped through it, her glasses sliding slightly down her nose. "My team did some digging during recess. It seems this isn't your first incident." Chase blinked. "Excuse me?" She looked up. 3 years ago, you were arrested in Miami for disorderly conduct. Charges dropped after a donation to the city's revitalization program. A year later, an assault accusation at a club in Chicago, case dismissed after the victim withdrew her complaint. And last summer, a hit-and-run in the Hamptons, settled privately for an undisclosed amount. Do you see a pattern, Mr. Langford? His mouth opened, then closed. For once, he had no words. I'll tell you what I see, Judy continued. I see a man raised to believe that laws are for other people. I see the product of a system that rewards wealth and punishes honesty. And I see the end of that illusion, right here, right now. Tara Collins sat frozen, tears glistening in her eyes. The audience was silent, fully absorbed in the spectacle of justice taking shape before them. Chase tried to regain control. Judge Judy, with all due respect. Don't you dare say, with all due respect, she snapped, her voice suddenly sharp as a whip. You've shown none. You think money gives you power, but let me tell you something, Mr. Langford, power without character is corruption. And corruption always meets its reckoning. Chase's lawyer leaned in, whispering frantically, but his client ignored him. You're making an example out of me, Chase said, his tone rising in desperation. You're doing this for TV, for your audience. You can't humiliate me just because people want a show. Judy's reply was instant, her voice steady and precise. Oh, make no mistake, Mr. Langford. I don't humiliate people. They humiliate themselves. I just hold up the mirror. The audience erupted in applause, and for once, even the bailiff didn't try to silence them. Judy waited for the noise to die down, then turned her attention back to Chase. You said earlier you own half this city. Tell me, Mr. Langford, how much of it will you own when your reputation is gone? When your father's investors see how his son conducts himself on national television? When the world sees how easily arrogance collapses under truth. Chase's face turned pale. Sweat glistened on his forehead. His voice, once dripping with smug control, now trembled. "Please, Judge, you don't understand what this will do to me." Judy's eyes narrowed. "What this will do to you?" "Mr. Langford, what about what you did to her?" She pointed toward Tara, whose voice cracked as she whispered, "He ruined everything I built." Judy slammed her hand down on the bench, her voice rising, not angry, but powerful. "You came into a woman's business, destroyed her property, mocked her, and then buried her case under money. And you have the audacity to stand here worried about what happens to you." Chase's lips parted, but nothing came out. He looked around the courtroom as though searching for someone, anyone, to come to his rescue. But no one did. Judy's voice softened, but it carried more force than any shout. "You think you can buy respect, but respect isn't for sale. You can't purchase dignity. You can't lease humility. You can't invest in decency. Those things have to be earned, and you've earned none." The room fell completely silent again. Judy closed the folder, her expression unreadable. "You said you own this city. But here's the truth, Mr. Langford, the city doesn't remember who owns its buildings. It remembers who builds them with integrity. And right now, all you've built is a monument to shame." She leaned back in her chair. "I've seen hundreds of defendants come through this courtroom. Thieves, liars, manipulators. But very few have managed to disgust me. You, Mr. Langford, just joined that list." The gavel struck once, loud and final. "I'm ready to deliver my ruling." The audience leaned forward, breathless. Tara wiped her eyes. Chase sat frozen, staring down at the polished table as if the wood grain might open up and swallow him. The empire behind his name had always been his armor, but at that moment, it felt like a coffin closing. Judge Judy adjusted her glasses and spoke clearly into the microphone, her voice echoing across the courtroom. "For the record, this court finds in favor of the plaintiff, Miss Tara Collins, and against the defendant, Mr. Chase Langford. But the damages I'm about to announce aren't just financial, they're moral." And with that, the judgment that would shake the internet to its core began. When Judge Judy began to speak, her voice was steady, but everyone could feel the storm gathering behind it. Every person in that courtroom, from the camera crew to the gallery, sensed that they were about to witness something unforgettable. Chase Langford sat motionless, staring blankly at the bench, his fingers twitching against the table like someone waiting for a verdict that might end more than just a case. "Mr. Langford," Judy said finally, "you came into this courtroom believing money would insulate you from truth. You treated this proceeding like a publicity inconvenience, not a matter of justice. But justice, Mr. Langford, has a long memory, and she does not care about your lineage." She paused, then turned to the bailiff. "Read the damages." The bailiff handed her the papers. She looked directly at the defendant as she spoke. "You will pay Miss Tara Collins the full cost of her property damages, $46,000, as well as an additional $25,000 in punitive damages for malicious destruction and intimidation. Furthermore, I am ordering a formal referral of this case to the district attorney's office for review of potential interference with evidence." Chase's mouth fell open. You can't refer me to the DA. This is small claims." Judy didn't blink. "It stopped being small when you started bribing your way through life." The audience gasped. Tara pressed a trembling hand to her mouth. Judy continued, unwavering. "You thought saying, 'I own you,' would intimidate me. But what it really did was expose you. You've mistaken wealth for power, and power for immunity. But what you actually own, Mr. Langford, is your behavior. And your behavior has consequences." Chase's lawyer stood abruptly. "Your Honor, we'll be appealing." Judy's glare cut him off instantly. "You're free to waste your client's money, counselor. But make no mistake, the record is permanent. The evidence is undeniable. And the footage you just saw will live forever in public archives. Maybe next time your client will remember that cameras don't take bribes. The crowd chuckled softly, then went silent again when Judy leaned forward. Her voice lowered, not in anger but in something colder, disappointment. Do you know what offends me most, Mr. Langford? It's not your arrogance. I've seen that my whole career. It's that you've had every opportunity, education, privilege, connections, and you've used them to make the world smaller for people beneath you. You had every advantage, and you chose corruption. Chase's face was pale now, his voice thin. You don't know what it's like, what's expected of me. My father, he doesn't tolerate mistakes. Judy's eyes hardened. Then maybe that's the problem. Maybe he raised a man who doesn't know how to face them. The line struck like a blade. The courtroom stayed frozen in silence, the only sound the faint hum of the air conditioner and the creak of Chase's chair as he slumped back, defeated. Judy stood from her bench, a rare move that sent a shiver through everyone present. When she spoke, it wasn't for the record anymore. It was for him. You told me you owned me. But now, I want you to look around this room and tell me what you really own. Not the building, not the cameras, not the people. What's left, Mr. Langford? Because from where I'm standing, all I see is a man whose wealth can't buy him a single ounce of respect. Her tone softened slightly, still sharp, but with the faintest trace of humanity. Let me give you a piece of advice your father never will. The higher you build your life on arrogance, the harder it collapses when truth catches up. And today, truth just called in your debt. Chase's eyes glistened faintly, though he tried to hide it. His jaw clenched, his voice trembling. You think this changes anything? The media will forget. My father will fix it. Judy leaned in. Oh, they'll remember, Mr. Langford. They always do. You'll become the cautionary tale at every dinner table that whispers your last name. You'll be the face people point to when they say, that's what happens when you think you can buy the world. She lifted the gavel, but didn't strike it yet. Her words slowed, deliberate, powerful. You told me you own everything. But after today, you'll learn what ownership really means. You own this verdict. You own your disgrace. And you own the moment you looked a judge in the eye and declared yourself untouchable, only to discover you weren't. Gavel strike. The sound was thunderous, final. The courtroom erupted in a low hum, half applause, half stunned silence. Tara Collins burst into quiet tears, relief breaking through months of fear and humiliation. Judy gave her a small nod, the kind she reserved for those who had survived something ugly with dignity intact. You did well, she said softly. You fought back. Tara whispered through tears, thank you, Your Honor. I didn't think people like him could ever be held accountable. Judy's expression softened. They can. But it takes someone brave enough to stand their ground. You reminded him, and everyone watching, that truth doesn't bow to money. She turned to the bailiff. Escort Mr. Langford out. Chase stood slowly. The arrogance that once clung to him like cologne was gone, replaced by something else, fear. Real fear. As he walked past the bench, he glanced at Judy, his lips parting as if to speak, but no words came. The cameras captured the look on his face, the first flicker of a man realizing his empire could crumble in a single afternoon. As he exited, the gallery whispered in disbelief. The phrase, I own you, had already taken on a new, ironic meaning, one that would soon explode across the internet. Within hours, the clip of the confrontation would go viral, Judge Judy's icy stare, Chase's defiance, and the sentence that stripped him of everything money couldn't buy. News headlines would read, Billionaire's son humiliated on live TV, Judge Judy delivers the verdict heard around the world. Late-night hosts would replay the clip, dissecting every second of his downfall. Memes would flood the internet, side-by-side shots of Chase's smirk fading into panic, captioned, when owning everything means losing your soul. But the legacy of that moment wasn't entertainment, it was revelation. Because for once, millions of viewers saw what happens when power meets principle, when arrogance collides with accountability, when even the richest man's son learns that respect isn't inherited. Judge Judy sat back, the faintest trace of a satisfied smile tugging at her lips. She didn't gloat. She never did. Justice didn't need applause, it just needed to be seen. And in that courtroom, on that day, it had been. Court is adjourned, she said quietly. The gavel struck one final time.